Here talking Sixers with Sarah Kustok. They surprised a lot of people last night, taking down the Toronto Raptors 112-101. Now forcing a Game 7. Raptors bench struggled again in this one. Jimmy Butler did not, though. Once again leading the way for Philadelphia. Dropped 25. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons bounced back, combining for 38 points and 20 boards. All right, Sarah, give us the how-to. How did the Sixers do it? How'd they beat the Raptors?
You used the word force a Game 7, and there was force coming out of Philadelphia. And we've talked so much about their starting lineup, the talent that they have, but they can come at you in waves, and that was precisely what they did. It was Jimmy Butler out of the gates in the first half who really just applied so much pressure offensively, defensively. The second half, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid took over. But I think Ben Simmons is the one guy that we had been waiting for him to be more aggressive, more assertive in how he plays, and he set the tone. I mean, he was someone who can do so much in the open court, and I think the defense of Philadelphia made such a major difference. They locked down on Toronto. Toronto shot the worst that they have this entire postseason from the three-point line. But what does that do? That allows you to get out and run, get out in the open court, more free flow to their offense. And so I think it all started on that end for the Sixers, which is a major factor in when they are good, when they can defend. That translates into how they play offensively, but they also took care of the basketball. And that allowed them to control the tempo of the game.
And I understand there's a narrative, and the numbers back it up to a degree, that Ben Simmons is not as effective offensively when Joel Embiid plays. That Joel Embiid, because Ben Simmons needs an open lane on the offensive end, that if you had more of a stretch five than the league's maybe last remaining true traditional big man, what it would do for Ben Simmons. And that is true to a degree. But where Ben Simmons is the best is when Philly is getting stops. Yeah. And Philly gets stops when Joel Embiid plays. When Joel Embiid is on the court and his defensive impact. Last night, it's not like Joel Embiid had an enormous game, defensively. He had 2 blocks. He had 1 steal. But he was not only altering shots, he was dissuading guys from even going into the lane. He was making them take tougher shots. That allowed Toronto to have the bad shooting percentage, particularly in the first half, allowed Philly to get out into transition or even semi-transition. And that's when Ben Simmons, like, oh, that's how you become the #1 overall pick despite never shooting the basketball. That's where you can show your full impact. So I think it did all start, I know it's cliche, but it did all start with the defense for Philly. It made Ben Simmons into the best version of Ben Simmons. And as you said before the show, C, there is a question of why Ben Simmons at this, it's not like he's an older player where he's got to ration his energy, why he can't bring this level of force, this level of intensity, this level of push every single night. But when he does, even though they have a very thin bench, they're a very dangerous basketball team.
You see the best basketball out of Ben Simmons, and I don't know if Sarah's going to agree with me on this, because it's hard to play basketball when you're desperate or antsy. But Brooklyn series, Joel Embiid's out, he's sick. Man, we desperately need Ben Simmons to take over. He shows up, best playoff game. Man, after the embarrassment in Game 5 in Toronto, man, the fans in Philly starting to turn against them, wondering, man, is this process, is this really made out to be what it's supposed to be? Pressure that Ben Simmons had to play well, and he starts off the game as a different player. Now, why do you do that? What is the mentality that makes you're only motivated by the circumstance around you? And to be a great player, part of being great is being self-motivated. I motivate myself. It's not the crowd. It's not what people are writing. It's not what people are saying on TV. So when he's able to get to that level, and also it's just like anyone else, you got to improve your game. You can't have one of the premier centers that we have, if not the best, who should be posting up, and you got less offensive versatility than the 7-footer. So it becomes a problem as far as the team moving forward. But it was nice to be able to see him play with the type of energy that he plays at, because a 6'10" point guard is rare. But it's like a wild horse out on the mountain range. If can't nobody damn ride him, what good is it? I mean, it's pretty and everything. It's rare. But, man, you got to put a saddle on him, a bridle, put him in a race so that the whole world can see him. And that's what Ben Simmons will be one day.
But I think with Ben Simmons, and I think think we often question, why isn't he playing the way that we know he has the potential to? And to me, a lot of it's the flow of the game. So he gets more comfortable when he's playing in the open court, but also they've changed their offense. They have him in the dunker position a lot, right? So right underneath the blocks, underneath the basket to work. So a lot of what he does is predicated on drives by Jimmy Butler or by Tobias Harris, but he was also getting offensive rebounds. So all of a sudden, you're getting some fast break points, you're getting some offensive rebounds and some putbacks. You're not turning the ball over, so that just gives you confidence, and I felt like it fed into the way he was playing the entire game.
Well, what you're talking about right there, that is, to mix metaphors a bit, my whole case for how Zion instantly is going to average 20 points a game in this league. Because it's like, if you can get offensive rebound, if you can get out in transition, you can get 6 baskets a game without being in the flow of the offense at all. And so having Ben Simmons in those spots where you can get those easy buckets, because the other thing that is true, you talk about being self-motivated, there is the element of the best players. You see this a lot in high school basketball, a ton, and some in college, where even if a guy's a really good player, if he misses his first 3 shots, he goes into the tank. And Ben Simmons has an element of, if he doesn't get off to a good start, he is not going to have a good finish. But if he gets off to a good start, if he gets some easy buckets, then he plays with the force he needs to. But to me, the name we haven't talked about enough here on the Philly angle is Jimmy Butler, who has been the adult in the room and the best player for them offensively throughout this entire series, and the biggest reason that this series is not already over.
Adult?
Yeah.
Brett Brown's?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's true. James
Sense of adult.
No, 2 things. One, Ben Simmons can't shoot and doesn't want to learn how to shoot. But secondly, it's not just about Jimmy Butler, because they've lost games where he's played well. But when Joel Embiid is in there and he's healthy and he's playing well, he may not show the numbers you said it offensively and defensively. He's such a force and a presence that he has, the last 2 games at least, rendered Kawhi Leonard still putting up points, but not being able to do all the things that he wants to do.
Joel Embiid's a special player. Yeah. It's special. It's just they need to be able to figure this out. But what we have to do with Philadelphia is make sure that just because Elton Brand, he cashed it in, used this asset to bring Tobias Harris, to bring Jimmy Butler. It's like he's saying right now we're trying to win. This team coming into the playoffs, Nick, they played 17 games.
Coming into the playoffs, they had played 10 games.
10 games together.
5.
And so now we're looking at, they've played 20 games together as a starting 5. So as longer the series go, if they can happen to get through this, they're one of the more dangerous teams, because we don't know what they can be. They're just starting out, but we don't know if we're going to see this, because with Tobias being a free agent, Jimmy Butler being a free agent, that's why this series becomes so important for them.
And I also think the bench factor, Mike Scott was incredible coming in, knocking down 3-point shots, and Toronto's bench was absent.
And Toronto's bench, Toronto is the favorite for Game 7. They should win Game 7 there at home. Yeah. If they do, they have an enormous problem coming at them in Milwaukee, because right now Toronto is a 6-man team. I can't believe I'm saying it. Last year, they were an 11-man team.
We were talking about their depth being their biggest strength.
Last year, their bench unit carried them. They trade away C.J. Miles. They trade away DeLon Wright. OG has the appendectomy. All of a sudden, and Fred VanVleet goes MIA. There's 4 guys gone, essentially. It's Serge Ibaka and the starters. That's what we thought was going to be the case for Philly. Mike Scott and the starters. Philly's lack of depth hasn't hurt them in this series, because Toronto's been just as shallow as they have.
These guys have Toronto winning. Toronto or the Sixers? Toronto. Okay. Take a break. Sarah, we'll see you a little bit later in the show. Coming up, are the Warriors no longer the favorites to win it all? We'll let you know why we're asking next on First Things First.
Doris Burke stole your